Good afternoon to one and all present here. On behalf of the Department of Computer Science Engineering, NIT Puducherry, I welcome you all for the 6th session of the 5 days online Atal FDP in recent advancement in social Internet of Things and industrial Internet of Things in the topic Cloud Computing for SIoT and IIoT. It's a great pleasure to introduce our resource person of the session, Mrs. Vaishnavi Y, Product Line Manager, ALE India Limited, Bangalore. She received her MTech in Networking and Internet Engineering from Sri Jayachamarendra College of Engineering and BE Electronics and Communication from Sri Jagadguru Chandrasekhar Narayana Swamiji Institute of Technology. She is an experienced technical specialist with a demonstrated history of working in networking products for about 15 plus years, spent now in software R&D and in business development for networking product. She has strong interpersonal and collaborative skills with the ability to work with cross-functional teams, both internal and external, and across teams with different personalities from different geographies to help deliver projects on time. She received a Night Out Award for conceiving and driving the training and mentoring program for the new joinees, and also for building and mentoring a team of 8 members from partner outsourcing company TMA Solution, Vietnam, with SRC training session to handle AOS products or projects. She was awarded Long Service Award from ALE for persistent service to the company. She also received Award of Recognition for executing leadership qualities, team building spirit, and diligence in organizing, conducting, and driving the knowledge exchange program independently for the entire R&D team. She is also a I Am Remarkable facilitator. On behalf of the Department of Computer Science Engineering, NIT Puducherry, I invite Ms. Vaishnavi ma'am to take over the session. Thank you.
Am I audible, ma'am? Just a sound check. Sendil, audible, ma'am? Am I audible? This is just a sound check.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, wow. That was a really. Yeah, I'll present the screen. That was indeed a very exhaustive welcome about me. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words and introduction. Folks, on behalf of everybody, I would like to thank you for deciding to spend the next couple of hours with me while we walk through a journey on cloud computing. Indeed, it's appreciable your join today. Let me give a very small heads up here. I might just take this session a little unconventional, making it a little bit more fun and probably, possibly interactive. Well, it's the afternoon just after our nap, so I'm sure we need a little bit of color to keep ourselves awake. So possibly maybe you can just grab a cup of, coffee and stay awake. Thank you, friends, for joining. Yeah. Today we have gathered here to go through different topics which impact SIoT and IIoT at large. In that, I will now walk you all through cloud computing as a technology. So, what's in store for us in the next coming couple of hours? Hopefully I'll wind up before a couple of hours, maybe, So the objectives for today will be like, maybe by the end of the session, you should be able to explain what cloud computing is. Then we'll probably be looking a little bit of aspects which will help improve businesses with respect to the profit and productivity by means of incorporating cloud computing. As much as we spoke about why we are going to do it or what exactly it is, next we'll go into the little bit of technology aspects about it, where we are going to speak about the cloud computing models. Post that, we'll take a journey to the different types of services which are offered in cloud computing. And yes, we need to touch base upon the IIoT aspect of cloud, like what is IIoT on cloud has to offer us. And of course, here and there, I'll be adding a lot of case studies. Some of them are not even on the slide. It's just going to come on the way. So stay tuned. So this is what we are going to be expecting out of this session. I welcome you all to stay present with me. So grab your pens and paper and let's move next. Well, what's cloud computing? The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, defines cloud computing as a model that enables ubiquitous and convenient on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources, for example, networks, servers, storage, applications, and services that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management offer or service provider interaction. Wasn't that a very exhaustive definition, right? At least to me, if I was on the other side, that's what I would have left out as a cry. Let's look at something else. Okay, if I could just break it down a little bit. Cloud services are an on-demand model for computing, storage, security, networking, and other IT resources that are provided as a service, hosted in remote data centers, accessed via the internet, and most importantly, paid by usage. Friends, if you're somebody like me, maybe you would want it even more broken down further than this. It is simply on-demand computing resources, which is going to be delivered to you over the internet. It's as simple as that. Let's just look at it as resources. The resources can be anything. It can be software, it can be infrastructure, it can be some kind of hardware, anything. So this kind of computer resources, which we are going to use on a, as you saw it a little while ago, pay as you use, only on demand, only when I want. That's when I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. So when you look at that infographic which is added there, you see the data which is being accessed, which is being uploaded, downloaded, taken from a cloud over there. It is simply this. Cloud computing is simply deliverance of any services over the internet. Good? Y'all are with me? Okay. I'm taking that as yes. Okay. While we just try to understand cloud computing as is in the most simplest of layman's language, let's just ponder over why would we even want to go with cloud computing when we had so many conventional services which were already available to us. So that's going to now push us to look into the benefits of cloud computing. First and foremost, it's cost effective. Well, how do we say it's cost effective? The reason being, it helps the user to pay only for what they use. There is, we're going to talk a lot about it in detail in the coming slides, definitely. But yes, it's cost effective because the use you are paying as you use. There is very minimal or almost no cost involved in the infrastructure, which goes usually into millions and billions of euros and dollars while you are establishing enterprises. Also, let's take the case of suppose you're some kind of a small or a medium business unit. They're investing in the infrastructure, the storage units, the data centers is itself going to be a huge investment for the, the company. Maybe it could be a startup. In that case, opting for cloud as a services is the best solution for these um, kind of businesses where they are paying it more like on a rental basis and not really investing in the infrastructure. Next point, let's look at the fact about it is scalable. Now, what do we mean by scalable here? Well, the cloud helps to fix any resource problems or any of these on-premise hardware problems. Suppose, say, example, there is this organization now which is catering to, say, about 100 employees. Now, 2 years down the lane, they got blown into becoming a 1,000-member company. If they had probably not foreseen this and they did not have the infrastructure which was going to support this many users, it's going to become a huge challenge. The entire data center amenities which they have will probably become defunct, and they will be compelled to invest in um, newer technologies or newer infrastructure. So this kind of transitioning of scalable, let's one more thing, one more bit over here. Let's ponder that, when we say scalable is not always growing from small to big. It can even be the other way around. So you might want to say there is an organization which is now probably going to break down into smaller organizations or smaller teams, units, whom they want to manage differently. So if they were just hosting everything on the cloud, it would have been much easier. And anyway, they were not having infrastructure related cost incurrence over there. So it would have been very easy for them to scale down to. Next point when I'm talking about as the here is elastic. It is elastic in the sense it helps you to take in any of these changes as is on the go and not really, there is no change in the service which the user experiences as and when this elasticity of taking in larger amounts of users or lesser amounts of users, larger data, lesser data is easily handled. And the user on the other side is not really experiencing what exactly is happening over here. Next benefit out of a cloud computing option is metered. What do we mean by metered? Which is simply pay as you use. As a simple analogy, we all know how we are using electricity today, how we are probably using the water which the government is supplying. There is a meter fixed and you pay only as much as you use. So on the same lines, here in cloud computing as well, the resource is metered and you pay as per your usage. Of course, there will be many subscription models which will be introduced by the vendor, which you can subscribe to and take the subscription. Sometimes the subscription is based upon the duration, and there are other times the subscription is based upon the amount of usage on in terms of maybe the data. So the metering happens differently in different cases because here it is simply the vendor offers the subscriptions which the vendor offers. Next advantage or one of the key factors of moving to cloud computing is security. Well, here what we mean is the algorithms, the security which is provided by the vendor cloud service is phenomenal. Which if suppose you were going to have your own network, investment in that much of security, whether it is in terms of the firewall, in terms of the licenses, is going to be very phenomenal, since there is a service agreement which is signed between the vendor and the user. There is sole responsibility which lies in the vendor over there, and there is the highest possible secure algorithms are incorporated as part of the cloud service which is provided, which eventually helps in keeping the data secure. Resilience. Next point. Well, what we mean by resilience here is the capacity to bounce back from some kind of an outage, some kind of a failure, some kind of a redundancy is phenomenal when it comes to cloud computing services. So that invariably makes it a very reliable option to go for when we would want to opt for cloud services. Let's look at it like this. When it comes to resiliency, not only does the cloud provider simplify the system management, but it also typically makes a guarantee to provide at least 99.99% of uptime, which means you almost don't see any outage or any failure, because there are humongous amounts of um, algorithms and APIs involving restoration and failover concepts which is involved in the cloud services provided there. Self-serviced. Well, here you can take the services on your own. You can start choosing the options you would want and move on with your choice. So it's your choice, and there is a lot of options which is available in front of you, which helps you to use it and at the same time even manage it. So hence it is self-serviced. You are managing it, you are managing your subscription, you are enjoying the service, and you might want to upgrade to it, or if you're not really happy with it, you might want to downgrade it. So there is a lot of options which is available, and self-serviced option which is provided when it comes to cloud computing. Finally, of course, not the least though, cloud computing is very much data driven, which means that the data which is stored, which is empowered within these systems, they are all machine learning and artificial intelligence driven automated networks at the back. Well, the cloud systems also make MI and ML and AI more accessible, because the cloud toolkits are better for model training and maintenance. And of course, the training data set is very, very rich when it comes to the big data cloud architecture and so on. Well, with all these benefits, let's just move over to the next topic and check out what else is stored in for us over here. Well, as much as we speak about benefits, let's just take a moment to even see the different kinds of risks which are involved in the cloud computing as a technology. Um, well, as much as we would love to trust and ensure that it is secure, there is always this risk of the trust which you have in the cloud service provider. Well, unless the service provider is technologically very advanced, incorporating all the required algorithms, incorporating the infrastructure, there is this chance that there might be some amount of trust issue which the vendor, which the user has on the vendor. Um, Well, there is a phenomenal mindset shift in this aspect in the past years. If you had asked me about 10 years ago whether I would be using a cloud service for myself, I think I would have thought many a times before I opt for it. But now the technology advancement in trust management of the cloud is happening in a phenomenal growth here. So it's fairly trusted networks now, but yes, it is an option and it is a choice which the user has to make. So this trust issue as an aspect always stays in the mind of the user. Now, when I say in the mind of a user, I don't mean it's just an individual. It could be even an organization. Any user, the user need not be see, at the end of it, the consumer is an individual entity, but the consumer is also the organization. So the consumer and it's a consumer and a cloud vendor relationship which forms over here. Next aspect. Sometimes we will experience there is a very the data access is not up to the mark. We see that it is slow. We do not see the upload and the download happening really fast. Probably this is because of the users, because of the data, because of a particular event. Let's take the case of if suppose you all were watching some high profile cricket match in on ESPN. What happens? There are so many times you actually see that it is just asking you to wait, or sometimes there is a 2 minute or a 3 minute lag, and there is this friend of yours who's watching it on some other application, and he already knows there is somebody who's been caught or who's been bowled, but you're still seeing the 2 balls before that. So this kind of chances are possible if the traffic, the users, the amount of people trying to access it is really, really high. Another very, very important topic here is some legal issues which might come up if the cloud service vendor provider is not complying by it. There are a lot of laws which have been framed in this aspect, like the GDPR, the FedRAMP, CCPA, the California Protection Act, HITRUST. Many of these are certifications which need to be complied by the cloud service providers. Well, when they are complying by that, invariably they are even establishing the trust which is needed on the cloud service provider. Okay. Some other risks which involve in cloud computing are loss of customization or control. Yes. Well, you are now completely bound by the vendor, so you have to take what's offered to you. The option to control it or customize it as per your organization's need or as per your individual need is not possible. Like say, just take the case of if you were having a set-top box and then you were just, if you were somebody who were in the previous kind of set-top box options, what were you doing? You used to, you will flip over channels, you will watch what you want and move on. But say if it's the case of Amazon Prime or Netflix, which you're using, well, there you are watching what's provided to you, right? So sometimes that kind of customization is a little minimum when it comes to Netflix. Final point will be there are chances that there are unknown costs which are incurred by the users, maybe in the form of regulations, taxes, sometimes the changes which happens in the government. And we usually see when there is a rise in infrastructure costs, invariably, it's even passed on to the user. Lately, in the past year, there have been huge rise in charges of some subscriptions, some usages, primarily because of the shortage in the semiconductor industry and in general the electronic industry. So you might actually be probably subscribed to on a particular rate and you would have got used to the service, and then suddenly with time its cost may rise due to various reasons. So now you're in a position where you cannot back out of the service, neither and you're in a fix. It's like a catch-22 situation where you cannot really back out, but you need to really use the service and move on. So this kind of unknown costs come up with time. Well, we did speak about the risks and the benefits. Let's even see now at the most important aspect which actually sets cloud services apart. That is, how do they even offer such low prices? What makes them offer such low prices? How is it possible? Let's take a look. Well, there are two aspects which need to be considered when we are looking at this topic. That is, economies of scale and the total cost of ownership. Let's just deep dive a little bit into these two definitions. What do we mean by economies of scale? That is the cost advantage which the enterprises get when they operate at a large scale. What exactly happens is, even we also know, right? See, when we see, right, the retail and the retail market, the wholesale market, that's what we say. When something is purchased in large, in bulk, the costs are reduced. Why do they get reduced? There are various reasons, because of the logistics, because of the supply chain involved, probably even because of the packaging. Many aspects are involved over here, transportation, which help in reducing that cost. So this, when you're providing at large, this gives an edge to the cloud providers to make deals with the government to again lower their infrastructure cost, increase their tax savings, and help them improve network connectivity for that inter-site communication. Well, they need to operate at really high speed, high bandwidth network. So this provides them an opportunity to start working out with the governments to help them cut down on their costs. And whatever costs they cut down on, it's like a ripple effect. They are going to pass on that profits, if we have to really call it in layman's term, to the user as well. So eventually what happens is it's the end user who gets benefited by these low prices of using a cloud. Now, let's just imagine if it was us, an individual who's trying to establish the whole thing, then there will be costs which need to be incurred for purchase of those servers, purchase of maybe those firewalls, uh, the gadgets, the systems, the computers which is involved, the switches, the routers, you name it, and it is there. So all of these infrastructures you will have to be investing upon. Now that is cut down on a considerable scale by the end user, and at the same time the cloud service provider is also benefiting out of it, because they are procuring, okay, here that's very important. They are procuring in large scales, and that profits is passed on to the end users. Okay, next important terminology is TCO. What is TCO? TCO is total cost of the ownership. Well, now if I'm a user here, the cost I am going to incur by using any cloud service, that's the cost to me. That's the cost of my ownership for that service. So the cost I am going to incur will be simply pay as you go mode, which means I will not be spending on large capital for the infrastructure. I will also be having a control over how much I am spending. When I say how much I'm spending, it's about which subscription as a user I will be availing. Uh, Folks, you must understand when I say when I say you, it's not just individuals. I would like to reiterate this often because I want your imaginations to grow in terms of even businesses, in terms of even organizations, small businesses, medium businesses, large enterprises, everyone here. So the I here is very figurative. It's not humans, individual alone, which I'm talking about. So the expenditure cost of the infrastructure of the organization of that company is also under a control. They are able to evaluate, they are able to plan their budgets, they are able to foresee what their investments need to be on infrastructure wise and all that when they are having a control over the cost of their ownership. Of course, here the procurement and the usage resources is now again under the control of the user. It's simply like now the investment maybe if it's a small business, if it's a new startup which is coming up, the investment may probably be only in a few laptops over there. So the procurement of infrastructure for that organization is completely in the control of the ownership over here. Now, when I talk so much about the total cost of ownership, which is TCO, there are two important terminologies which will come up here for us to understand. They are Capex and Opex. When I say Capex, it means the capital expenditure. And when I say Opex, it means the operational expenditure. We'll look into a little bit detail in these two terminologies because this terminologies and this concept is what sets cloud services apart from, cell phone services. Let's take a look at a Capex. What is Capex? Capex is simply the upfront expenditure for any physical infrastructure. Simple. The end, period, over there. Your investments for the data centers, the investment for the routers, the investment for the cabling, the investments for the probably the IP telephones which is involved there, everything for the organization over there. Now, well, if we want to move a little bit out of the organization, we all love to subscribe to Amazon Prime, Netflix. So how do we bring Capex understanding over here? Well, now we are paying for a subscription and we are watching some kind of shows, movies, which is offered over there. If it was a Capex model, it means you probably go and pay for buying that CD, that disc, that Blu-ray disc, or you're going to the theaters, you're investing over there. And we are just not investing in going to the theaters, also in the popcorn there, the parking over there, everything. So all that put together is your Capex cost for watching a movie, right? You're getting what I'm saying, no? So same thing, if I was now going to watch the same movie on Amazon Prime or Netflix or MNX, just imagine the phenomenal decrease in the cost. So that's the Capex cost which I'm trying to talk about. How is Capex evaluated? Capex is simply evaluated by the deductible from the accrued total tax bill. Of course, it is going to be very difficult to scale on demand. And this involves very high infrastructure costs. Sometimes the growth can be very unpredictable, and that time the demand can outpace the expectations, right? So the cost involved over there will be phenomenal. I mean, let's just take an analogy here. I just spoke to you about going to the movies and going to the theater and actually watching the movie. Let's take a case like, you offered to sponsor the movie, and the minute people knew that you were sponsoring a movie, maybe you had planned only for 5 guests, but suddenly it went up to 50. And then by the time you actually booked, it went up to 25. So just because you were sponsoring, right? So what happens that time? That was an unpredictable growth and it outpaced your expectations over there. So same thing, just imagine if you were watching that you had hosted a watch party at home and the movie was probably played on some kind of a demand service which you had subscribed. Your investments to scale up to cater to more guests will be just a little bit more popcorn and probably a little bit more Coke over there, which is just involved. That's all, right? So this is Capex for you, where the costs will be very upfront and difficult to scale. What all does the Capex involve? Typically, the Capex is nothing but the on-premise data center for you. And that involves, like I mentioned, the servers, the storage units, the backup and the drives, the network infrastructure, which needs to be strengthened, the data center infrastructure, which needs to be strengthened, and hiring of very highly technical skilled personnel to maintain this entire infrastructure to ensure there is business continuity, right? So these are all the challenges and of course the cost which you would need to incur when you are going in a capex model. Let's take a look at the next model, which is the OPEX, the operational expenditure. See, it is simply the daily operational costs which is incurred for usage of that service or that product. Simple. Here, what exactly happens is it is deductible from the annual tax bill of the infrastructure or the organization. And say if it is for your individuals, maybe at the end of the year when you're trying to do your own personal budget, you are going to just deduct your annual subscription which you were spending for some of the services you were providing. And if it is organizations, it is in their annual budgets which they are going to deduct the amount they were spending on cloud services. Of course, it doesn't involve any upfront cost and it simply works on pay as you go pricing model. You pay as much as you use. What all does the operational cost include? It includes the lease of the software and probably the customized features which the cloud service vendor will be providing. Of course, the cost of scaling on-demand resources is also going to come back to you. Say, for example, you were subscribing to a particular model and then you are now foreseeing that your organization is going to hire and expand to a newer premises where you're foreseeing you're going to hire 115 new recruits. So that time you might probably have to switch over to the next subscription or a higher subscription model, which the cloud service vendor is providing to you. So scaling at that time is also going to affect the operational cost. Of course, here the billing which the vendor will be doing will be user based or it will be organization based billing. Wow, it's time for some case study. Yeah, most of it was something which I was already speaking to you, but let's just take a few minutes and look at this model of Netflix. I would have otherwise chosen maybe Amazon Prime here, but then in the next few slides, I'm going to really keep using the word Amazon more frequently. So let me just give a little bit of benefit to Netflix in this case. What is Netflix? Netflix is the largest leading media service provider, which has a more than 100 million subscribers worldwide, and it is known to be broadcasting over 125 million hours of TV in the form of shows, movies on a day-to-day basis. Well, what was the problem, or rather, what was it which Netflix needed to achieve this objective? They wanted, or they required an application monitoring for a massive scale to cater to the so many number of subscribers which they have. And at the same time, they also required a real-time network monitoring to improve the customer experience. What I mean to say by this here is, have you observed that when you are watching a couple of shows or a couple of movies, you are already recommended what others to watch? So here what's happening is Netflix is trying to understand what are your preferences, and it is improving your experience of their service. It is making your search easier. It is allowing you to get access to something which you might want on a faster note, quicker access, and thus a better experience. This is what they wanted to achieve as a service. How did they achieve it, by the way? They achieved this by moving to the Amazon Kinesis. Amazon Kinesis is an API. It's an application service which is provided by AWS, Amazon Web Service. So how did they do it? Here, it was by the second response time for the analytics and queries, which is provided by Amazon Kinesis. Thus, it was reducing the downtime, and it was also able to cater to the increasing footfall. When we say footfall, that means increasing number of simultaneous user experiences here. Eventually, by moving to this model, they reduced cost when compared to other solutions. Well, you must know that initially Netflix started as a videotape vendor who were trying, then move to this kind of a business model with the passage of time. Also, Amazon Kinesis provided some simplified data ingestion APIs, which helped achieve this objective, and therefore it increased the capacity to handle such large loads of streaming data. Let's move on to our next very important topic, which is the different models which are available as part of cloud computing. Well, a picture speaks a million words is what they say. So the different types of cloud computing is simply broken down into three types: private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. Let's look into what each of these models are in the next coming slides. First, let's look at what's a private cloud. Private cloud is something which is, yes, it is a cloud service, but completely owned by the organization itself. And it is operated and taken care completely by the organization. It is created in the organization's data center itself. So it eventually provides self-service access to computer resources to its internal users alone. It's like this. You are an organization. We talk about intranet. We talk about a repository where we can store our files. We can store our code. We can store our data. So that is nothing but a private cloud. And who's maintaining that private cloud? For that we are investing in a dedicated data center, which is having a high storage, and we have who's maintaining it there. It's the organization who's maintaining it. It is the on-premise technical person who's hired by the organization who's help managing it. So that's like a private cloud. Well, what are its characteristics? The private cloud can be accessed only over the private network. And for that, you need to have connectivity over the private network, which means, yes, if you are probably working out of the organization, you need to have access to your intranet via VPN maybe here. So what I mean to say your data is stored in the private cloud of your organization, and now you are not on premise. So accessing that intranet doesn't really enable you to do it from your personal laptop when you're at home. So if you really need to access the data which was stored in the in-house cloud, you need to have access to the intranet via the VPN. Of course, like I said before, one of the other characteristic and also overhead here maybe is the requirement of a highly skilled dedicated personnel who is hired by the organization to maintain this private cloud. Next type of cloud will be the public cloud. What is a public cloud? Well, this is a cloud which is owned by a service provider. It provides resources and services to not one organization or a dedicated organization, but multiple organizations and multiple users over the intranet. So it's like you have your data stored along with many more users. You're sharing the cloud over there along with many other organizations. You're uploading and downloading data. You're using the services. You're enjoying the services, which is now stored in a public infrastructure. What are the characteristics of a public cloud? The public cloud is characterized simply by multiple end users. It definitely needs connectivity over the internet to be able to access. And of course, it's a public access. So you don't need to be really very skilled to access the data. So it's simple access which is involved here. So you don't need to be a technology person to actually be using, like we see these days, even the elders at our home are able to access the photos which are stored as part of the Google Drive. So they may not be really technically skilled person to be able to access some of their pictures which are they are storing in a drive which is provided by the public domain there. Right? Next topic will be this beautiful concept of hybrid cloud. Well, I think this brings the best of both worlds here. It combines the properties of both the public cloud and the private cloud. What it does is it allows the users to run applications in the cloud or on premise as required. It's like this. Let's take the case of maybe, you're hosting a website in a public cloud and linking it to maybe a highly secure database which is hosted in your own organization's private cloud. So there is a combination here, right? So for a part of that service, you are using the private cloud, and for part of the objectives you want to achieve, you're using the public cloud. So it's a combination which you are using. What are the characteristics of a hybrid cloud? Well, it's a hybrid resource location, definitely. It is similar to public cloud in efficiency and in the cost. But there is a huge amount of organizational control and management which is offered here. Like, for example, like take the case of the example which I said, where maybe the organization only wants to host the website there, but the critical data of the users information, which is the database, they want to keep it in their own private cloud. It definitely requires some amount of skilled personnel to handle this kind of a management, because there is an involvement of public cloud, and there is definitely somebody who needs to be well versed with cloud management, who needs to handle this kind of a service. That brings us to trying to understand the difference between these three models. Well, upfront public cloud, there is no capex. We all know it. There is high agility. What we mean by high agility, which means you can mold your usage, you can scale your usage. It is very flexible to the customer's need. It is very flexible to the organization's need, whether they want to scale up, they want to scale down. When I say scale down, say for example, they are going on a subscription model. They very well know that when it comes to, say, the month of December and the last 15 days, they are mostly on a shutdown mode or a holiday mode in most regions. They might downsize their subscription for that period alone. So there is huge amount of flexibility which is provided by the public cloud in that case. And at the same time, it's a consumption based model where you're simply paying as you use. It's pay as you go model, pay as you use model. Private cloud, yes, it gives you immense control over the management, over the data. It has a high control over the security, which simply means that your trust issues is handled here because it's happening in your own organization. Hybrid cloud, it provides the provision for flexibility, because you can offload the services which all you want to the hybrid part. At the same time, it is giving you the flexibility to keep control of what you want within your private cloud. So that's why you are going to comply as you require in the case of a hybrid cloud. Let's take a quick look at who are all the different providers in this space. And I'm trying to capture some of the popular ones here. Definitely Amazon Web Services, AWS, all of you would have heard it for sure. Microsoft Azure is another very reliable player in this space. Google Cloud Platform, GCP, is another player in this space. And of course, Alibaba Cloud is also another popular provider in this space of cloud providers. Let's look at the next topic, which is the cloud services. The cloud services is simply the different types of being able to use your cloud. Well, it is divided into three different types, which is SaaS, software as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, and IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Let's look at the first topic in this, the first model, in fact, infrastructure as a service. What is infrastructure as a service. This is simply hiring the infrastructure provided by the vendor over the internet. Okay, when I say infrastructure, we mean here physical devices, which means servers, which means routers, which means access points, switches, phones, it could be anything, those gadgets, those physical devices, which are the concrete procurements of any organization, that is also being used as a service. Well, what can be rented when you are in this kind of a model? It is the IC infrastructure, like I said, the virtual machines, the storage devices, networks. When I say networks, it's all the networking different devices which is over here. Maybe it could be the edge routers, it could be the core routers, it could be the access points, anything. Name the devices which come under networks, IP phones maybe. And of course, the operating systems, which is being availed as a service in this case. So infrastructure as a service involves the usage of the network architecture and the infrastructure as a service. So you pay for the usage of these devices. You are not necessarily owning the device. A simple analogy is like your car rental, investment on a car is, the car is a very huge physical device. The upfront investment on the car is huge, but you are probably availing the service of the car for just a few days, a few months, few hours maybe, and you end up paying only for the usage over there. So that's a crude analogy though, but then, it's just that when we allow our imagination to spread its wings is when we'll be able to relate to some of these concepts, which are otherwise, difficult to envision maybe. Platform as a service. What is a platform as a service? In platform as a service, you get to use an environment to build your software, to test it, and even to probably deploy the software. So where all it is used? It is used by application developers who are going to use the platform as a service. Because see, many times investing even on those, like, on the chipsets, on those boards, if you are a independent developer, becomes a little expensive. So in these cases, you are trying to use the platform itself as a service. The common usage is, like I said, whenever there are development folk, so they hire the development framework provided by various vendors. Most of the business analytics and business intelligence is also done using platform as a service. So in these cases, it's a wiser option to opt for this service. Let's come to the most popular topic, software as a service. It's, I think, all of our favorites as well, What is software as a service, SaaS? It is simply hosted and managed completely by the cloud service provider for the end customer. So who is the consumer over here? It is the end user, simply. And what can be the examples in this case? Let's take the case of your email, your office tools, Skype, OneDrive, OneNote. The consumer is the user in that organization. There is no cost which was involved in establishing the mail server, in establishing the database required to manage these users. There was no infrastructure required to establish the data center needed to store all these information. Nothing. All that the organization had to do was pay for these services. And it's simply that application which was being outsourced by the cloud provider, and the consumer here was taking it on a rental basis. That's software as a service for you. When I say software as a service, it's not just this. It's, I think, simply anything. Now, even maybe your food delivery apps, your courier apps, all of these also are nothing but software as a service, where you are trying to avail some service. That is, you ordered food, somebody's coming and delivering it to you. But how did you avail it? It's simply via an application, via a software. So that's software as a service for you. But what I would like to tell you here is the beauty of cloud as a service is now reducing, I think, like everything into anything as a service. What was infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service, software as a service is now getting blown by leaps and bounds into anything as a service. We'll see why I'm telling that even. Let's take a look at comparing these three service models. Infrastructure as a service provides the control to configure and manage your hardware. No doubt on that. So you have complete control over the hardware. All it requires is the users to manage the operating system, the data, and the applications, definitely. In platform as a service, it helps you to focus completely only on your application development. So say if it was a startup company of small and medium size, so they might, all they need to do is invest their time, their energy, their money on the focus of developing that application, not really on buying that board or investing in that code software. They don't need to do that. For that, they can hire the services and test, deploy, and run their application to check. Well, another very important advantage of platform as a service is it definitely helps in remote working of distributed teams globally anywhere. It is not now going to compel. There were days in my initial years when we did not have even laptops, so we had only desktops. So if you were running some code and you want to see it compile, you want to see it run, you want to see it work, you need to sit in your office in front of your desktop to see. Slowly it moved into laptop, and we moved out. And even then there were challenges because we were working on hardware devices where it was the switches, where it was the hardcore electronic device where we were burning the software on and testing. So that again involved, although it eased a bit, it did involve going into the organization, sitting in your lab and working. Then came the simulator for the hardware on which you were testing your software. So that suddenly became your gifted boon. There were people working in remote teams across geographies, working in Eastern time zone, Western time zone, and you here in the Southern hemisphere of the earth. So there was this 24/7 productivity happening when these kind of simulators came into being, and it also it enabled the companies to hire teams globally and definitely save on the cost of shipping these switches, these hardware devices to them. So they would simply test it on the simulators and help you give the results and ease the work. So this was seamlessly allowing teams to work across geographies distributed. All it needs is, of course, managing the application and the data, which is centrally managed by the organizations. Let's look at SaaS. This enables simply for the payment as a software for the subscription model which you are going to use. It also allows the user to use the software without worrying anything about its management. This is absolutely hassle-free. You pay, you get to use the infrastructure. So there is no almost zero capex involved here. You probably, if it was a company which is trying to go in the SaaS model, they do not even need to hire any premise, hire any device. There's so much of savings which actually happens. It's almost a zero capex model. This is one side which is one of my favorites, all-time favorites, you know. Let's look at the comparison of the cloud service in terms of management. When it comes to managing any organization, any service which is on-premise, what all factors is involved? It involves the network setup, the storage device setup, servers. Friends, I'm looking at the leftmost block there. The virtualization, operating system, the middleware, runtime, data management, and finally the application management. So if it was a traditional on-premise establishment of this entire structure, what would you be managing as a consumer? It's everything if you are doing it on-premise. Infrastructure as a service definitely offloads a bit. Here, you need to manage the applications, the data, the runtime, the middleware, and the operating system. What's managed by the vendor is the storage devices, the servers, the virtual machines, and the network infrastructure. Platform as a service has eased your burden a little more further here. All you need to manage is your data and your application, nothing else. Everything else is managed by the vendor with the addition of the operating system, the middleware, and the runtime over here. Software as a service is a furthermore blessing and a gift. Everything managed by the vendor. The user need not worry about any of the factors required for the establishment. Well, this brings us to the next stop of another case study. This case study falls in the infrastructure as a service type of a model. Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise recently came up with one of its products. Well, maybe now we should call it a service because it has coined, like I said before, anything as a service. So now here, network as a service is provided. Now here, the consumer who is opting for this service need not actually have any of the physical devices which is required to establish a network. When I say to establish a network, it includes all the devices like the routers, switches, core switches, edge switches, access points, IP telephony, Nothing. So in this offer of network as a service, it includes the product and what are the services it offers. The services are definitely the subscription models, which allows what the vendor wants to use and scale the usage of that network. What is the advantage which is provided over here? Well, the advantage which it provides here is there is software and hardware unbundling, meaning it is separated. There is no coupling of the hardware and the software here. The devices are again remote. There is no mix of any of these uh, hardware and software. Also, the services which are provided are even some of the software services which comes like office kind of tools, the teams kind of tools, which are services. It came up with a service called as a rainbow, which is provided for as a collaborative service, especially for the education sector, for the medium and small business kind of enterprises. And like I said, the services and the products are on a subscription models and they are licensed. They offer different kind of license here where the license are based upon the kind of devices or the services you would like to use. Say if it's an organization which is focused more upon the secure network, especially if it's the healthcare sector. So the licenses offered for the healthcare sector can be different from the transport sector. It can be different for the educational sector because now the health sector and the transport vertical is more about the real-time data there. So the licenses offered in those cases are different. The licenses, which is again coupled with the subscriptions. There is an just a minute, please. Yeah. Also, the operations here is completely automated and managed by the company itself. Well, another example of anything as a service is also management as a service. Okay. There are these cases where the network is already established and managing that network is outsourced and that is subscribed. So management as a subscription is also another offering which is now doing the rounds in the industry sector. That brings us to the next topic. Well, we spent a considerable amount of time understanding the different concepts which is involved in the basics for any cloud computing. Folks, we must understand here that, it's really difficult to assimilate a lot of in-depth topics and that'll be a bombardment of jargons and topics. The intent of any workshop and especially this kind of interaction will be to give you that view, introduce you to these technologies, and as much as it interests you, you take it forward from there, spread your wings, go and deep dive into it and understand. There are these courses which are offered by Amazon, which is offered by Microsoft, which is offered by Google to understand these clouds. So certifications which is offered. When you take in these courses, you start understanding all these concepts which we just spoke about a little while, how they are achieved, how they are implemented, what are the different APIs involved there, what are the different algorithms or the protocols being used over there. So that in-depth knowledge, I would invite you all to start exploring and take advantage of it in due course of time. Now, having seen the concepts of cloud, let's take a look at how IoT and cloud are coming together. I'm sure the past couple of sessions you'll have heard a lot of things about IoT and of course in SIoT spectrum. I will not be going too much into the details of it, but just a quick refresher. What exactly is SIoT? It's a collection of services that connect, monitor, and control IoT devices. And how it is achieved? It is achieved using some sensors to collect data and process the data. Now, cloud computing. How are these two going to come into play together? There is an integration of this IoT which happens to store and process the data and thereby offer enhanced performance. Well, did it just go a little bit overhead? Difficult to imagine? Okay, let's take an example. I'm sure most of you would be having Alexa at home or your Google Home at home in your home, right? And say, let's take this case where you are also a subscriber of Amazon Prime. So if you closely observe, Alexa is definitely able to understand what is the viewer's choice, what is the viewer's viewing, and it's able to offer. So that is a sensor, that is a device which is now trying to communicate with the cloud, which is hosted on AWS, the Prime, and getting data. And if you open your Alexa app and if you see, there will be recommendations of what you like the most. How did that just happen? There was this social networking which was happening between these two gadgets of IoT, right? So that's the kind of picturization or the imagination I want you to bring in to understand the IoT and the cloud computing together. So the objective is simple. Give an enhanced performance offering to the consumer, the user. How? By understanding and processing the data which is available with the cloud via the data which is collected using the sensors of the IoT. Simple. What are the benefits of IoT on cloud? Well, again, it goes without saying, there is definitely a reduced upfront and infrastructure cost. Now, as a vendor, by incorporating the IoT over the cloud, they are able to give a better offering to their consumer, to their user, right? Um, if I have to give you one more example, uh, there are these applications which is now also trying to read your location, right? So it's trying to get your data of your location and then it starts giving you recommendations of the cinemas nearby, the eateries nearby, or sometimes maybe even if you're in need, the medical help or the pharmacy is nearby. How is this happening? It's trying to get this data from the cloud via the presence of your gadget there, which is having a sensor. So there is a social networking happening there over the cloud to offer you the best of service. Well, again, this is also a pay-as-you-go model for storage and for the computation. It definitely helps in improved scalability and, of course, the availability of the systems. There is an increased lifespan of the battery powered sensors and the devices over here because the data being given is again now outsourced to a cloud. So the usage of a dedicated database is not really required over here. There is easy aggregation for large amounts of data because it is this cloud which is managing your data via these concepts of big data, DevOps, so many concepts over there involved. There is large amounts of data being handled by cloud, which we cannot even otherwise imagine if we were to do it individually. Of course, it even gives the benefit of smart IoT devices. What are the various IoT services which are provided on the cloud services? We know these are again some jargons, friends. So when you deep dive into these technologies, it is these which you might want to. Okay, sorry, there is a typo on the first one. It is AWS IoT Core, not OR. So when it will be shared to you all, it will be given to you all as Core. Apologies for that typo there. Uh, Microsoft Azure provides IoT Hub, which is the IoT services over the cloud. Google Cloud Platform, GCP, provides what is called as Cloud IoT Core. AWS provides Greengrass, AWS IoT Device. The other devices which are provided are the Azure IoT Edge and Azure IoT Central. Time for another pit stop for another case study. Let's quickly look at Walmart. All of us know or heard or maybe even experienced Walmart. Walmart is a very large conglomerate which is supply chain and consumer driven provider, right? Now, what are the changes which Walmart tried to incorporate to scale their business and thus provide better user experience to their customers? It went forward to taking up three things. First one is the digital transformation. Next up is the omni-channel experience, and finally, innovation. How did it achieve this entire experience, the phenomenal consumer experience? They adopted the Microsoft Azure to grow and enhance their online experience. Then they tried to meet the customer demands with a powered checkout, during the online purchase and online transactions. How did they bring in this omni-channel experience? They brought in both a mix of e-commerce and brick and mortar. When we say this, um, as much as they have the e-commerce experience, which is for people who want to do their shopping online, they still have the physical stores available for going and having the shopping experience. So they brought in this multi-experience for a consumer to cater to all kinds of consumers. There may be people who want to actually go and physically experience the store. That is also available. Or there are people who just want to experience it online and probably for want of time or for multiple choices, maybe usages. See, it comes with both pluses and minus. Maybe if it was a physical store and if they wanted to, if the consumer wanted to go and probably pick up a box of cereals, they are compelled to choose from the variety which is provided on the store's aisle over there. Maybe if it was just had to be chosen between 15 different varieties of cereals, breakfast cereals. But same thing, there are say more than that varieties available if we were going to select it from their e-commerce website, and there the product is delivered to the home from the warehouse. So usually what's listed on the e-commerce site will be from the warehouse itself. The same experience can be related to even Decathlon. Most of you all would have heard Decathlon also, right? So Decathlon also has this omni-channel experience where they have both the physical store and also the application from where the purchase can be made. They went even one step further, where they even listed the product, started listing the product where the product was available, and and also with due respect to sustainability and bringing in sustainable goals, they even offered pick up from the store where you're actually saving on the logistics or the cost incurred on the logistics. So this omni-channel experience is a very satisfying experience for all the types of customers which any organization or which any conglomerate, which any company has. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. It just enabled the customers to access the store from anywhere. Now, their final and of course not the least, but one of the most important aspects was they invested in the innovation. When I say they invested in the innovation, what they did was they leveraged IoT to reduce the energy consumption for the refrigeration units, which was there in most of their physical stores. They also used machine learning techniques to start routing their trucks, which was part of their supply chain management, and thus they uh, had a very efficient supply chain system over here. This just brings back to my memory. Uh, um, uh, Most of you all would have been aware of ID Foods, right? The ID Foods brand, which is very popular in India, which provides the packaged batter for ready to use idli and dosa batter, right? Or even the Malabar parathas, which they have, or the vadas, which they have. And I remember listening to the CEO of this company. It was not a very profitable company in the beginning. They incurred a lot of losses, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then in one interview, he mentioned the time and the investment they made in trying to understand their um, logistics and their supply chain, how it was moving. Now, in this case, it was especially challenging because they were all fresh foods which needed to be delivered on time. They did not have shelf life. So they had to figure out how to do this. And that's when the CEO spoke that they started using the technology of IoT to understand the consumer needs of a store. There were times when there were certain stores where their foods were sold in large numbers, and in some stores it was not so many. So then they used this location-based GPS system, the concepts of IoT, and they started devising routes on the fly. And it's not like the route is the same in their supply chain. So it was this technology which they incorporated by way of IoT and by way of understanding the location and bringing in an effective service in their supply chain management. Something very similar to Walmart. Friends, although in the slide I have posted the case of Walmart, but I just thought as we talk about the topics, I could introduce you to imagine, to experience even other vendors whom we are experiencing or whom we know on a daily basis, like Decathlon or like ID Foods for that matter. With that, my friends, we come to the end of this presentation. I immensely appreciate the time you have provided to me and the patience you had to hear me out. Um, Thank you so much for being present with me through this hour. Now I give the control back to Sendil Vadivu ma'am to take it over from here. If we have any questions or any queries, we can take it forward from there. And friends, in this slide, I have flashed my email ID via which you can reach me. and also probably connect me over LinkedIn, where I'd be happy to connect with you as well using this link. My LinkedIn ID is very simple, Vaishnavi_Y, Vaishnavi-Y_ I am remarkable. Thank you so much, friends, for your time. Ma'am, I would like to hand over back to you, ma'am. Yeah.
Dear participants, do you have any queries? You can ask, ma'am. Participants, any query? So can we conclude the session, ma'am?
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Wisdom is the reward of experience and should be shared. To a greater level, Ms. Vaishnavi ma'am, shared her experience and knowledge throughout the presentation. The presentation was very flawless and very neat, ma'am. It was a great session. On your busy schedule, you had time for us to present for our participants. Thank you for your valuable time, ma'am. On behalf of Department of CSC, NIT Puducherry, I thank Ms. Vaishnavi ma'am for a bunch of industrial information and about cloud computing. It was a great time with you, ma'am. Thank you so much.